laners that Mr. Jim is very comfortable on. If not, then they should have just taken Lance for themselves. That is one thing that I was looking forward to, but Infamous actually picked up the Grace and not the Lance. So altogether, maybe they want to remove that box, but if they do, then Bren Esports might just pick up the Baron, and that would be a very late game scaling hero, and that might just give Infamous some sort of trouble. However, Baron is easily countered with very structured early game aggression.
Yep, so there's still a lot that the side go with their second ban. They are pretty deep into their bonus time, and whether they're just thinking about it very hard and fully, especially you did talk about that weapon power pedal being an option, something you have to consider and be wary of, but it looks like we will have to go for a draft reset, and same pick should go through without doubt. But yeah, going into this second ban slot for the side of Infamous, there's just still too much to really, I guess, have a guess on, and we now have to just wait and see what they pick. And with that, I think if we talk about what would be good to finish off the comps on either team, I mean, we've got Grace and Lance, who are both just very good aggressive roamers, and there's so much that could work out with that. So it's still very much up in the air for either team.
Well, definitely. With the Lance being picked up on Bren Esports, they can really venture into looking into other heroes. I'm not surprised if they will pick up a Catherine for themselves just to put Sync 1 on that of Lance, and then they just have tremendous amount of CCs that can just put out and to just secure and help keep Mr. Jim on that laner role safe. But this time, once again, back to Infamous's ban. They have quite a variety of heroes they can just remove from the fold, and it's down to whether or not they will restrict the hero pool on Mr. Jim. If not, then remove the weapon pedal that posed quite a bit of challenge for the side of Infamous in the previous time they actually met up. But they will ban out the Sky, quite surprisingly, against that of Bren Esports. I'm not surprised if they will pick up the weapon pedal, but they will settle for that BF, the Black Feather, a rather flex pick coming out for the side of Bren Esports. They can run him Crystal or Weapon, but it's highly likely it will be a Weapon Black Feather. And for the side of J3X, or rather for the side of Infamous, they can just explore. And we saw rather weird and interesting, peculiar team comms coming out from Infamous yesterday. So I'm really looking forward as to how they will draft against a Black Feather. Scarf is probably out of the question at this point in time. Maybe they'll settle for Castro to go up against a Black Feather. If not, like said, maybe early game aggression comms can come through as well.
Yes, and if they don't pick up that Scarf, I wouldn't be surprised if Brenny decide to do it themselves, because the Scarf Black Feather Lance combo could be quite effective indeed. And right now I'm wondering if they're just kicking themselves a bit for banning out that Sky, because Sky actually can go quite well against Black Feather at times. There's a bit of a skill matchup there, but I'm sure Infamous confident enough in their abilities to do so. And now it's just the question, Rhyme is always a possible pickup for the side of Infamous. They are going to go for the Vox as their laner more than likely, which Vox we've seen in the previous two matches being played to great success. But this is Infamous we're talking about. They picked up the Arden, which means we're probably going to see a CP Grace, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, it's either that or this Arden actually have got heavy hitter, the epic talent of Arden in this matchup. Else we'll probably be seeing an on-hit Grace with maybe a tension bow aftershock pickup that it's a lot of on-hit burst damage just to counter. And I'm not surprised whatsoever to actually see a battle, which means we might actually be seeing a CP Vox coming out. And if that is the case, maybe Infamous have found their answer to this battle pickup, because as we were talking before stream even started, CP Vox, very, very niche hero, or rather very niche build path, and against a Petal works very, very well because of the resonant bounces. You can get onto Petal without actually hitting Petal. So that is one thing Infamous may be considering. And another pickup as well that Infamous can actually go for to counter this Petal would be Adagio as well. But Infamous, they are known to be playing that CP Adagio Spaghetti on the CP Adagio. So all in all, I'm quite interested to see as to how this will work out, because if it will be a CP box, then it will be the weapon Grace, and that on hit the benediction damage on Tension Bow into Double Tyrant's Monaco. If not, then a Sorrow Blade into Double Tyrant's Monaco. Grace will just hit like a truck, and it will probably just remove Petal from the fold immediately, if not immediately.
Yeah, but I wouldn't be surprised with the side of Bren Esports if they go for this weapon power Petal. That's a bit of a sentence.
Yeah, I mean, weapon power Petal, that is highly possible with the CP Black Feather in the jungle, and weapon power Petal will just be in lane. And if that's the case, the side of Infamous might just want to swap out, or rather, just change roles, and we'll probably be seeing a CP box then.
Yep, and that's the thing. It really is whether they will go for that CP or just weapon power that's just so much more meta. And you talked about the on-hit Grace. It's more so either way, because you are going for the Tension Bow and Aftershock, so you're going for a bit of both. But we'll have to see as we go into this. I mean, Infamous always the ones to surprise us, and it looks like, well, we can't count too much on what they've signaled to us in terms of the lobby. But we'll have to wait and see once they've started building items as to what they go for. But with that, as always, let us know which team you guys are cheering for in the chat. And yeah, Luxurio, who is your team to win for this first matchup?
For me, honestly, if you don't ask me, I've been a staunch supporter of Infamous, so I hope Infamous actually wins this match. But Bren Esports definitely will have a chance after witnessing their performance coming out from yesterday, and we will be seeing a weapon Grace, but it's still too early to say that yet, because I mean, for Chingy, he might just go for Tension Bow Aftershock, the on-hit build, and for Spaghetti, it is quite, not quite telling with the double Swifty being picked up. However, Spaghetti, or they might just go for double weapon power, that might work as well, but we are seeing a very early aggression.
And we do see a very, very early aggression. Bren Esports back, but look, we've gone the side of Bren. We have that weapon power Petal coming out once again, but will it work against Infamous is the question. We'll just have to wait and see, as Infamous pushing very deep into the enemy jungle. Will Bren Esports let them get away with that? You see guessing on this Lance, needs to land these impales and misses, but I think doesn't manage to actually steal away, and is going to hand over first blood to the side of Infamous, and they're going to be able to steal away the mid camp and the mid triad from the side of the Bren Esports.
Yeah, we do see very, very aggressive maneuvers coming out from Bren Esports whenever they do settle for a Petal. Petal just works very well in that early game, and generally as Petal, you can kind of just trump over Chingy on that of Grace, because Grace just do not quite have access to the backlines almost immediately. So that is one thing maybe Bren Esports were looking to do earlier on with that aggression that came out from them early on. But with this, Spaghetti will be heading back into the lane and will be going up against Mr. Jim on this Petal. And in the early game, like I said, Petal can put out a lot of damage and aggression, especially with those very, very irritating minions, Munions at least. And on top of that as well, the range on Petal SNK, though, popping that flash will keep him alive for just a tad longer.
We see Chingy jumping into the fight with Benediction to secure another kill for the side of Infamous, taking down that Petal. This is something that I kind of worry about. It is going to be very heavily on guessing on the early game, really protecting Mr. Jim up in that lane, because now with Grace being on hit hero, it just, usually you've got Grace as a very aggressive roamer, but in this situation is going to be able to jump in and actually do quite a surprising amount of damage.
Yep, Mr. Jim once again going back into lane. SNK will be the next target, but Spaghetti is right back now. All the Munions pop with one Vanguard. And this is, in the early game, you can't quite say much, because a weapon Petal her spike works in a very weird or interesting manner, if I have to put it. She's very good in the early game. She falls out in the mid game, and then once she gets all her 3 items, up to 4 damage items, she starts coming back up into the game and can put out so much damage with that extended range on that basic attacks with the overdrive on trampoline as well. So this is one thing maybe Infamous have to watch out for, but we will be seeing a CP, or rather a weapon spaghetti. Weapon spaghetti sounds weird, but we will be seeing a weapon box and a tension bow being picked up by Chingy. We will be expecting a lot of aggression coming into this early game.
Yep, and you see Infamous already put minion up to down, and Sync 1, funnily enough, in the enemy jungle, might be able to go for those backs as he spots them coming up on the mini-map and is going to be up to take those away. But meanwhile, it looks like Infamous is going to be able to get that out of Treant and then make their way back up to lane just in time to clear these minions before they push into turret. But guessing going to be able to land the Impale. There's no follow-up, however. And I think this is where it comes into SNK, the pick onto Arden being very good for the side of Infamous, because it really helps negate the amount of damage that Bren Esports can do when they catch them out with Impale, and even when Black Feather tries to jump onto any heroes. It's just a very good hero to have with that Vanguard to jump in and save his allies.
And we saw this before coming up from Infamous, but at the point in time, we actually saw Chingy going on to that utility glaive, but this time Chingy just swapping it out and will be going for that weapon graze that I've been talking about. A lot of burst damage on those benedictions, and of course your basic attacks as well. And you can stack it up with your tension bow proc with that benediction, because it's considered basic attack. So all in all, it will work very well for Infamous. Guessing X now, Sync 1 as well, coming onto that lane. Minion Candy Pop they are, and will be looking to push this turret. If not, then go down to just apply pressure in that of the jungle.
Yep, so this is another thing of whether it's being used to its full potential or not, but they are Crystal Sentry more than likely out of this, but whether they're going to get out there alive is the question. SNK going low, Divine Intervention being used onto them, but Chingy needs to be careful not as tanky when they're not playing in that roam position. And now it looks like they're going to be diving in deep and actually managing to win this fight for, or hold out this fight for a fair amount of time. But in the end, Chingy will fall to the hands of Sync 1 on that Black Feather, and Pedal the Jim being able to pick up a kill onto Spaghetti. So I mean, they got an objective out of this, and if the side of Infamous are looking to play this very early, especially going for a double weapon power build, it kind of signals that that's what they're looking to do and finish this out as soon as possible. It isn't a bad idea at all to go into the enemy jungle so early at 5 minutes on to take away some of these crystal sentries. And we know Infamous a lot of the time like to go and just completely eliminate them out of the time that they're even working on their second enemy turret. So Infamous is very smart at that and like to have that freedom to roam around the enemy jungle, and it just helps push out and end games quickly. And that's the thing, that Infamous are a team that's very good at doing that. But right now we see them trading a bit of damage up in this lane, returning their attention back here, trying to push down a turret.
Yeah, but even then, all 3 members of Bren Esports and Infamous on this lane, it is the calm before the storm, and Spaghetti will just clear lane, no problem. But back on my point earlier on is that we saw this coming up from Infamous before. Spaghetti will be going for a lot of attack speed and will just be building up the breaking point stacks in a lot of team fights that will be happening in the late of game. But at a point in time, Pato would be able to just outrange you in terms of the damage, the attack range, and it will be very, very difficult to just jump onto Mr. Jim, especially with the pill that's coming out from Guessing. As we saw earlier on, a very questionable movement coming out from Infamous right there, going for the Crystal Sentry, and it kind of paid off because they got a Sentry, but that in turn gives 2 kills over to the side of Bren Esports. Mr. Jim now.
Oh, Mr. Jim going very low. There's the wait for... Careful, there's Fountain available, Guessing, and he's going to put his dives, but there could have been close. Tension proc still available for Chingy when they dive in, so it's a very dangerous game they're playing. But SNK going to get caught out on that Impale, no follow-up coming through by Bren Esports. They're just trying to hold on to their turret at this point. Chingy diving in and doing a lot of damage onto Mr. Jim, And likewise, it's just a lot of poke going around the table. But right now, Spaghetti going to be the target of Sync1, but Sync1 going to fall first because Spaghetti has that breaking point, stacking up to 7 and managing to take out Mr. Jim as well. This is massive for Infamous as they're going to be able to push through onto that first turret. They did lose Spaghetti, however, in that fight. I'm not sure if it's Spaghetti who took out Mr. Jim or perhaps it was Chingy, but they managed to win out that trade overall for the side of Infamous, just losing one person, managing to take out both the carries and get a turret for themselves. Of course, Infamous would have preferred to do this sooner. At 7 minutes in would be nicer, but this is where Infamous need to go, especially if they're playing with this double weapon comp. They need to continue to push down these objectives, because if they let it go on for too long, I believe Bren Esports have a very good chance to bring this one back, only needing to focus on one form of defense here.
Yep, but I do see where Chingy, or rather the side of Infamous, is going with this team comp, because with Benediction and the basic attacks of Grace, it actually lands in a dome, right? It isn't like one target, it spreads out in a zone, and that way Chingy with one Benediction can immediately just remove the minions, forcing Petal to just respawn those minions and the seeds, and that way just giving the side of Infamous maybe a tad more space to work with, rather than having to cope with the minions, as well as Spaghetti going in, building the breaking point stacks, but will just back off.
Yes, overall it does look like a good team combat together to go against Petal, even if it is this weapon power Petal that's relying on their basic attacks than their minions. But as you said, it might just be that little bit more that Infamous need to win out the team fights overall. And before we go anywhere else, while these teams are kind of just going around regrouping, farming up and whatnot, because right now they've been so busy in the last few minutes, we did get an matchup between Nebula and J3X Inferno as they play that third match offline, and Nebula taking that 2-1. So congratulations to them. We will be seeing them in the final matchup against whoever wins here. And as for the third place matchup, whoever loses this match will be going up against J3X Inferno. But this is only the first match between Infamous and Bren Esports, so they still have a fair while to go. Although we're 10 minutes in here, I'm sure things are going to start heating up as Chingy diving in.
Yep, with that Benediction. Oh, God.
Ooh, and there's the gauntlet going down, but Jim, but going to be the trade hours. They're able to pick up a kill onto Box. It now going to use the Rose offensive to get out of it. Chingy going low, needs to be careful not to get caught out on that Impale, and it happens. Sync1 on the chase, but can they get there in time? Great use of the Giftian wall to stop them, and Chingy using that divine intervention on themselves, followed through with the Holy Nova. It might be enough to win it out, but Black Feather manages to get the kill and out of there as he manages to use the Feint of Heart onto a minion and escape with barely any help. So a great trade out for the side of Bren Esports, but very, very close between both teams.
Yep, and this is something that I'm talking about. If they prioritize all of their damages onto Mr. Jim, then they have to make sure that they have what it takes. They have everything to remove Sync1 on this CP Black Feather as well. CP Black Feather usually want to build defenses after the Shatter Glass, and we do see a tier 2 defense item, or rather a not reflex block, but a light armor onto Sync1 on that, you know. And like you mentioned earlier on, it is just so easy to counter a full weapon team. They just have to build armor and just stack it all in all. But this obviously gives chance to Spaghetti to just stack even further on that breaking point. SNK now being caught out.
And you see SNK taking down so much, taking so much damage as well. Looking so strong, they take Spaghetti out instantly, and Arden gonna get taken out. There's gonna be the divine intervention, but it's not enough, and Chingy probably gonna go down for the ace. That's the double kill onto Mr. Jim, and Bren Esports managed to get out of that with everyone alive. A massive wave of aced up minions, basically going to be able to take this turret and the gold mine. This is what Bren Esports needed, and it's really where I said I was worried for the side of Infamous, and that Bren Esports would be able to come back, because Infamous are playing such a risky road of going double weapon power, and it is the fact that when you build that armor, you're just negating the effect that Spaghetti has with that breaking point. I mean, he's going to build less and less stacks as they get more armor, so I really think that Bren Esports And although the team comp early on for the side of Infamous was working well against Mr. Jim, we can see Mr. Jim just becoming that much more of a powerhouse on this weapon power pedal. And I mean, it's such a Bren Esports thing that I'm surprised they didn't ban it out. Instead, what was their second ban? Do you quite remember that?
Sky. They actually removed Sky from the fight.
Removed Sky, and I'm sorry to say, but Sky, at least in my eyes, and it is sad to say, is not that much of a threat, especially when you're going up against Bren Esports, who can pull out such an amazing weapon power pedal. And you've got to give it over to the whole team of Bren Esports at this point, who are just playing it well to bring it back, especially Sync 1 on this Black Feather doing a great job of putting down the damage just with the Shattered Glass and the Broken Myth. It really seems to be enough for them to put themselves at 3 kills, 1 death, and 5 assists.
Yep, and honestly, if you were to ask me, I personally think that it worked well, SNK once again getting caught out.
Yep, and we see them diving on to SNK. Guessing in there with them, and guessing not too sure where to turn to is gonna fall. He didn't want to, I don't think he had the Crucible available, using it for his teammates to get out of there alive before he could himself. Is only going to be 1 kill traded over, so not the worst outcome for the side of Bren Esports, but you could see that even after SNK went so low, he was able to just stick it out and clutch it out to get that Crucible down, to get that Gauntlet down. And I think that's where we do see an Echo, or no Echo. I'm thinking maybe the first item was, but it looks like that's a potion, however. That SNK at the moment, if he gets an Echo, I think that's where Infamous might be able to turn it around. If they're able to separate Bren Esports, I think they have a chance. Because right now, Bren Esports are just such a powerhouse as a team, and they need to be separated to really take them apart one by one.
Yep, SNK once again getting caught out. Oh dear.
Oh, it could be a bit of a bait tactic. We'll have to... that. They are making the rotation down to back. So they did manage to push this lane up fairly far, but you can see right now Infamous just don't have what it takes to go for a full attempt on the turret, as Kraken is now on the fold, and if they die doing so, you know, it could really cost them a lot more. So right now the team's going to be a bit of a stalemate for now until they find Ben X5.
Yep, they will be. This is the usual calm before the storm, but Bren Esports will not allow the calm to go on for too long. Maybe looking to go in.
Yep, I'm sure Bren Esports trying to bait out that Gauntlet from Arden. As soon as that's used, they know that that's their chance to fight. Guessing constantly trying to land the impales, but needs to be careful to not lead Spaghetti towards them as he builds up those stacks. And Mr. Jim on the backline taking massive damage. And Mr. Jim managed to get out of the Gauntlet and just poke down Chingy, who had previously tried to dive onto them. Sync 1 using their own block to get out of there, and they're going to be able to do so. But whether they're going to go for the chase on Spaghetti, I don't think they can catch them out. I mean, Spaghetti has his own Sonic Zoom. SNK has the Vanguard to keep him out of danger. But for that, I mean, it's a fairly even trade once again. Both these teams, if anything, Bren Esports slightly ahead in the gold lead, sitting at 35.9k, and Infamous slightly back at 34.3. So it's barely any difference at this point, and it just depends how the team fights break out.
Yep, it will be down to how team fights break out, but I do understand where Chingy is coming from, or the set of Infamous is coming from. The 40% damage reduction that Grace offers with that Benediction. So whenever Grace Benediction in, she provides a directional shield of 40% in damage reduction for her entire teammate. For her entire team at least, and I guess this is what that Spaghetti have to make use of and take advantage of, and it will be this damage reduction, but they will be taking Kraken now, and it will lay Oblivious to the side of Infamous.
Oh, there's gonna be a flare coming,
but it will be too late.
wait for it comes out, and SNK in the middle of the fight doesn't have the gauntlet up for another 5 seconds. As long as Bren Esports can run away from this one, they should be able to win that out. The objective that they were managed to take, and they get the Impale onto Spaghetti, but they need to be careful now. Oh my god, the damage going down on Chingy. Mr. Jim taking them down instantly, and no one is checking him at the moment as he gets a double kill onto Spaghetti. Goes for the triple, but it's going to go to Sync One, the ace overall for the team of Bren Esports, and they just took that against Infamous, a team that's just such a known powerhouse, and it shows why Bren Esports is so strong at the moment, and they're pushing through with this Kraken. They may even be able to end this one. Kraken's still so healthy, and Bren Esports with so much damage, they're just tanking up this turret. They're going to push through the first base turret. Chingy is there, but going in alone is a very dangerous decision to make, and Mr. Jim getting chased down by Spaghetti. As long as Guessing can be there to save him, they do get the gifting wall onto SNK, but Spaghetti is still alive, but only for a second. Mr. Jim so low on health, manages to take them down, and now it's all onto Chingy. He's gonna be able to find Sync One, but the Kraken finds the turret. Black Feather able to get the crystal before it's all over, and Bren Esports getting the first game. Oh my, I would not be surprised if we see a pedal ban coming out from Infamous into the second match.
Very good game, very well played coming out from Bren Esports. Dan, very shaky early game because of how Petal scales, like I mentioned earlier on, or rather very shaky mid game, where where Petal still needs her items, still is looking to scale up and do not have that much of a damage. But when it comes down to late game, once Petal gets 4 of her items, and it's just very good game, that the game is almost set in stone after when Bren Esports, or rather Mr. Jim on that Petal, just able to get so farmed up and so healthy. And I don't think the double weapon comp will work against what Bren Esports is putting out. Only reason being, it's so easy for a CP Black Feather to just counter you, and CP Black Feather is one of those heroes that wants to build defense anyways.
Yep, so I mean, no prizes there. I going into that match, when I saw that they picked up the pedal, I was quite certain that would be that weapon power pedal. You did talk about possible counter of whether Infamous would want to go for that CP box just so they could get the resonance damage, but it seemed like for at least the start of the game, they were clearing out those munions a lot of the time, but you could see going down into late, it was more so that no one was even checking Petal. They were just so focused on Black Feather, who was up in their faces, and Petal was let free for most of those fights, and just able to rain havoc and build up or just put down their own damage with the basic attacks they had.
Yep, definitely. I mean, Petal has got such incredible range, and in order to reach her, it's either you go for the weapon dash or they can burst her down in a couple of hits, like 2, 3, 4 basic attacks. That way you can just remove Petal very quickly from the early game for the early game fights, and then just counter the other one afterwards. Grace, I understand where they are coming from. They can jump in, remove Petal, but Black Feather just being in Spaghetti's face, in Chingy's face, is just so difficult for the side of Infamous to just work around the mono CCs that Guessing is putting out as well.
Yep. And with that, we will be going into our next draft for the second game, so we won't keep you guys waiting any longer. Let's jump right on into that. This time, Bren Esports being on the blue side, and they're going to ban out Celeste instantly. And over on the red, we do have Infamous. The question is, are they going to ban the Petal? No, they go for the Idris, and now where I think Petal could be a possible second ban, but whether Bren Esports would take it as a first pick, I don't think so. I still believe there are too many meta heroes such as this Lance to pick up, and they're going to go with it again because Guessing very comfortable on this Lance.
I mean, both Guessing and Sync One very comfortable on this Lance, and the Celeste ban out is not quite a surprise at all because Celeste just does so well against the Petal. Your Heliogenesis, Petal tries to come in, you drop landmines all over, and you just blow them up in Petal's faces, and it's a one-way trip back to base for Petal, and thus the Celeste is being banned out for the side of Bren Esports every single game. And once again, we do see that Idris banned out and a Grace being picked out by the side of Infamous.
Yeah, and I do think we are still waiting for the ban to come through for the side of Infamous. They are having a bit of a think on this one. I mean, last time they went for the Sky ban, which was maybe not so good, but they're going to go for the Kestrel ban, leaving Petal still on the table. Do you think Infamous are just looking to counter this Petal this time? Or they might, I don't know, fall into the same trap?
I mean, they have got a lot of heroes to actually counter the Petal, but maybe the side of Bren Esports would like change things up and not just rely on the Petal. However, the side of Infamous now, they've got a pick. They can pick out Petal for themselves, and with one of the most reliable counters, like I mentioned earlier on, would be that of Celeste, and that's already taken out from the Petal or from the equation, from the hero roster. But now we will be seeing a Glaive coming out. I'm not surprised if Infamous will just go back onto their own comp, where it's just protect the box or protect the carry comp, and just try their bestest to shred through whatever, you know, the side of Bren Esports will bring out in this particular draft.
Well, now it is the question of whether Bren Esports play that Petal, especially going DC, because it really is what will shut down Weapon Power Petal. If you're able to make them stop attacking, well, then you've basically stopped the powerhouse or the main source of power coming from that Weapon Power Petal. And it is something to note back the last time Glaive was actually a first ban, and for good reason that Glaive has been picked up by Infamous, is very strong with the afterburn and just the damage he's able to put out once getting in there, because Weapon Power Glaive is so strong at the moment. But as I saw the Petal come up, Weapon Power Petal just came to mind, and Bren Esports are going to play it with confidence once again, looking at a fairly similar comp to last time. However, they had to ban out the Black Feather because they were on the blue side, and they did not want to let that go over into the hands of Infamous, because the CP Black Feather at the moment is also another one of those heroes that's just very strong.
Well, definitely, it's either CP or Weapon Black Feather, still very strong. However, the side of Bren Esports will lock in your Bay, and that will be Sky, and it's just down to the side of Infamous to try counter what Bren Esports is putting out at this point in time. Very, very strong drafting prowess coming out from the side of Bren Esports. The side, I always used to say, yes, that Grace and Glaive should never be in the same team because they are so very strong. But Bren Esports just so very comfortable, just letting both G's get through. And it's just down to whether or not their last pick, if they pick out that Taka, maybe it'll work, but they have to go up against a Petal as well. This is Scarf. Scarf is something I'm thinking about, but then again, maybe Chingy will be hyper farming this Scarf right now on Spaghetti, and so hopefully Spaghetti can get items before Petal does, and that way just put out so much damage that the Minions can't survive, and with the Spitfire can just go through to the back lines. But there's one thing to note as well. Scarf Spitfire do reduce damage the more things it passes. So it goes through lane minions, it does lesser damage. It goes through Petal minions, it does less damage as well. This is one thing that sort of Infamous have to think through. But with the sustain coming out and with Chingy probably on that utility glaive, if not then a very economical glaive, budget glaive like you like to put it, then it might just work out. But priority will be Petal.
Yep, and the priority, and again on that weapon, because right now we're looking at a more balanced team comp coming out from the side of Infamous. I mean, last time it was quite off meta, if you could put anything, having that Grace as a jungler and to go for the weapon power, not even the proc kind of Grace, is very interesting to see. It was quite strong, but just overall as a team, by going double weapon, they were at fault. This time they will have the weapon power and CP power, as Glaive will be weapon, and we'll see the obviously CP power, the crystal power, Scarf. And so with that,
at least there is no Black Feather here, so CP power still sounds fine.
Yeah, and with that we do have the side of Infamous, just they have a good team comp that, with Glaive, you mentioned it before, could help out their Scarf fight. They want to help hyper carry them. And by doing so, I think Glaive is one of those heroes like Weapon Power Lance that can do just that and be very economical and very budget on their build and allow the carry to get that much more of their own farm. Of course, the ambient gold in the jungle has been increased recently, so it makes this kind of strategy that much more viable, as the jungler will not get that far behind even if they're only getting ambient gold. But it's not really something that the side of Bren Esports could do for Sky, as Sky also needs her items more so than ever. So I'm not too sure if that happens. You're right that Infamous really will have the upper hand, the advantage against Bren Esports. But here we are loading into the second match, and let us know, as always, which team you guys are cheering for. And with that, Luxuria, the same old question of who you are cheering for this match. I know last game you said you're very much an Infamous supporter. I'm a Bren Esports kind of guy. Is that still the case looking at the drafts here?
Well, honestly, SNK going into the jungle of Bren Esports, trying to secure some farm for himself.
Yep, and instead, it looked like they go KO. They did manage to pick up actually at work at the. They might be able to fight it out with Mr. Jim. Right now, they could even be buying time for the rest of Infamous, but it looks like a bit of a failed strategy. And SNK just going to run into the turrets there, end their life sooner so they can get back to the base quicker. And I'm not too sure about that strategy going into the backs.
Well, honestly, looking at the draft this time, we have Sync1 on the Weapon Petal and Mr. Jim on the CP Sky and placed in lane. And I guess the swap out is logical because what, Mr. Jim don't want to face is Spaghetti in that lane and the Scarf that can just burn down the Mun so very quickly. That way, when Sync1 is on that Petal is up against that of Chingy, and it will be a relatively easy time for the Petal to just farm up, get his items as well. Granted, you'll not get the items as fast as when you are placed in lane, but all in all, it will be a logical put up, or rather logical swap up coming up for the side of Bren Esports. But back to your question, I hope, like said, the Infamous will have a 1-up, pushing this into a game 3. And the only reason I think that way is because I think Infamous has got what it takes. Bren Chong has got a potential as well to close this series out 2-0. There's no issues. I mean, they beat one of the powerhouses in Southeast Asia. They can definitely do it again in their own stride. So I'm not surprised if they do. But I hope, because now at this point in time, Infamous is kind of the underdogs now. Mr. Jim.
Although Mr. Jim needs to be careful, does get. And there's going to be Glaive picking up the return kill. And you can already see that what you said before about putting this Glaive and this Grace on the same team is such a dangerous idea to do. I mean, they allowed it, essentially. They picked up the Lance first pick where they had Grace as an option, but it was more that comfort pick, I'd like to say, for Guessing X.
It is definitely a comfort pick. I mean, Guessing X just plays so well on this Grace, so on this Lance, so there is no reason whatsoever to just swap it out. I mean, if it's not broken, why change it at all? So, and with Lance as well, there is a lot of CCs that Lance can provide, a lot of utility Lance can provide going into games. So I'm not surprised why they pick it up. But all in all, we are looking at a very, very, very slow game. They just need their items. They just want their items. For Spaghetti now taking a couple of barrage hits here and there, but all in all, it will be fine for both teams.
Yep, looks like just a bit of early game. A few first kills that went over, and if we look in terms of early game, it's hard to say. I would almost give it to Infamous, just the CC they have, allowing them to get the kills with the benediction into the Holy Nova that Grace has available to them, and then Chingy with the Afterburn, and then you've got even count out the goop that can be used to slow down and really catch out the enemies. I think that Infamous have a better early game in this situation, and you talked about before on the Weapon Power Pedal having a very interesting kind of power spike pattern, and I'm not sure how well it will work out against this enemy team who has this who they are deciding to hyper carry with 39 CS over to the 24 that Mr. Jim has at the moment. So yeah, it will be tough for Bren Esports this match, to say the least.
Yep, it will be relatively tough for a Bren Esports since, Scarf can just remove Petal, get to the backlines in terms of that Spitfire on those Spitfires. So it will be difficult, but then we cannot quite count out Mr. Jim as well. Mr. Jim on this Sky means that he can just slowly strike into the backlines, try the bestest to remove Spaghetti, but guessing X though.
Oh, Chingy looking. Yeah. However, sticking around, but Mr. Jim going to those backs to pick up, and I think this is what Bren Esports realized, that they're going to match the Sky with the Scarf at least a bit if they want to get into this game a bit more and survive through the mid game, because Infamous putting down so much pressure on this turret right now. You can see Spaghetti on that backline just doing work onto the turret, putting Spitfires in, and then guessing not able to find the impales that they need. But I think even if they do at this point, Bren Esports can't really go in off the back of them. They don't have the early game damage like Infamous does.
They don't indeed, and Chingy very patient with those afterburn, just looking for the right and the opportune moment for him to go in, but they will just hope to siege this turret. SNK goes in with a benediction. Oh, Chingy, there you go.
Mr. Jim actually body blocking one of those Spitfires from hitting the turret, and there's going to be the def way, and Mr. Jim lands for barrage damage onto Spaghetti. All the positioning right now from Bren trying to keep this turret alive, but they're going to have to back off as the minions push in, and Chingy able to just go in there and pick it up with ease. And now, whether Infamous are going to be greedy is the question and go into the enemy jungle to steal away some farm. They are going to do so. Spaghetti needing that mid-tree and able to get the healing and mana benefits from that, and they're now going to move their way onto Gold Miner. They really aren't stopping with anything, and this looks a lot more like the Infamous we know. They get the kill, they get some objectives, and in this case, they didn't even get objectives. They simply pushed Bren Esports back, took their turret, took some farm, and they've gone and taken the mid camp as well.
Yep, exactly. I mean, with one kill, you can quite achieve a lot. You don't really have to kill. Just get your enemies down very, very low, and you can push pretty much. You can pretty much push your advantage from there, just capitalizing on how low they are, if not then the amount of damage they do not have in this current early game. Because Sync 1 on that weapon power pedal, you really need farm to get up to your first tornado trigger into your second one as well. If you have those, then you can definitely put out adequate damage, but at this point in time, Sync 1 will just lack the damage. SNK being very, very outrageous now and just going in for it in bait.
Ooh, and this is Infamous once again. It's more so helping them out in towards the late game. It's a bit of a, I guess, invest out the Crystal Sentry so early, and now we see that they're going to just have that much more freedom roaming into the enemy jungle after they've already taken turret. And of course, the Crystal Sentry going to come back in a few minutes, but I'm talking about especially into the real late game when they manage to eliminate it completely, because Infamous is one of those teams that like to do that quite often, as they just go for objectives after objectives, and it's just real great objective control and what leads to the wins overall. Of course, Infamous overall is a team, very skilled players in that, but they just understand how the game works and how to win it out and finish these games.
Yep, and Mr. Jim on this Sky really needs to get all the items needed for Sky to just put out, enough damage all in all. So at this point in time, we will see a rather slow, farmy game, if you like to call it, rather than Infamous. Infamous, in fact, can just push their, the advantage now, knowing that Sky requires quite an amount of farm, quite an amount of items to actually put out enough damage. Infamous is playing very stale, very stagnated, just would not help the cause whatsoever. I mean, they have got their great power spike now. Spaghetti has got a Shattered Glass, Eve of Harvest, and the Clockwork, whereas Mr. Jim on that Sky only has got their Broken Myth and Frostburn. This great time for Infamous to just push and push and push, but they do respect Bren Esports as a whole and do not want to go quite as aggressive as they can actually do.
Ooh, but that might change up in just a second as the Crystal Infusion Beam Spaghetti is on hold. right now, and Chingy picking up that tornado trigger. This could be what they were waiting for. Although Spaghetti had that power spike earlier, so does Chingy now as they pick that up before Sync One even has their second item. And you can see how much behind Bren Esports are, because previously, as you mentioned, when Spaghetti went to buy that clockwork was when Mr. Jim finished off their Broken Myth. So a whole item ahead of Mr. Jim at this point. And as you can see, Sync 1 with only 230 gold is still quite a far way off completing that tornado trigger themselves. And it looks like unless they're able to go for the steal, Infamous are going to be able to get that gold mine and now push away Bren Esports. Guessing needs to be careful, and there's a lot of damage going down. Fountain forced to be used on the side of Bren before Barrage doing a lot of damage. Meanwhile, no one checking Spaghetti. Spaghetti able to get some free shots in with these Spitfires. Doesn't have a Broken Myth just yet, so it's not going to be stacking up, but still helps out in the long run as Spaghetti going to jump in there with the Afterburn, getting the kill, getting the Crystal Sentry. And it looks like they might even catch out Guessing. Oh, Guessing not able to make the jump over the wall, is in a bit of trouble, and he does it at the last second. Oh, very clutch, managing to not hand over another kill to the side of Infamous, but they're just going to go for that turret instead. They take it down instantly, and this is definitely looking a lot more like a general Infamous game that we see.
Oh, that Impale missed! That Impale could have just caught Chingy out immediately, and Mr. Jim going down very, very low.
But it looks like the side of Infamous don't even way Bren my own Spaghetti just too strong at the moment, has barely any, actually no defense at this point, just going for that Shadglass, Eve of Harvest, and the Clockwork building into the Broken Myth. And right now I think they can really rely on two factors. The fact that Bren Esports really just unable to at the stage they're at, and the second fact that you've got Grace on your team with the Divine Intervention, and you can really rely on that if the enemy ever does jump on you.
Yep, definitely. And one thing as well is that we see this is very, very like Infamous all in all. They don't really need kills. They just know when to apply pressure and where to apply it. And they can just easily secure objectives for themselves. Unlike the previous game, in this game itself, 12 minutes in or close to 12 minutes in, oh, another afterburn.
Yep, and we do see up in lane Infamous just Spaghetti and Chingy right now. Looks like SNK now going to the fight as SNK jumping in with the benediction. Mr. Jim going very low. There's the Dragon's Breath being used, and Chingy using the Afterburn to punt them away, but Guessing looks like he's going to fall, and he does. Infamous picking up another kill and slow the gold lead as they now go in, and they are trying to push for this anchor turret at only 12 minutes 20 in, and it looks like they'll be able to do it. They have the damage available to them, but look at that, the return damage coming out by Chingy as he dives onto Sync 1, and they manage to get the turret anyway. Infamous just being so overwhelming at this point and really pushing towards that 10k gold lead, now seeing at 32.8 over to the 34.3, and that's the Sentry eliminated, I believe, already.
Yep, that is the Sentry eliminated. 12 minutes and 50 in, not the fastest one. According to records, Vainglory records, I think the fastest was on 8 minutes and 30, if I remember correctly. But all in all, Infamous doing very well for themselves in this game, inching ever so closer to the 10k gold lead that they generally would have against another team. And Bren Esports now, they just really need to pull themselves together as a team to only fight fights that they have got, you know, the advantage against. Mr. Jim now lacking seriously in farm and in damage as well. Spaghetti already has got 4 full damage items as compared to Mr. Jim only having 3. Granted, you know, Mr. Jim, you know, wanted that early reflex block and thus not able to complete the items as soon as Spaghetti. But Infamous now just looking so strong, very, very strong. Their 3rd gold miner this game.
Yep, and that is going to push them up to 36k. So close now, trailing behind the 6.8. But I'm looking at as the fact that Infamous are aiming to get to 10k here. ahead of the side of Bren Esports. And there's going to be the engage coming out by Infamous, and Spaghetti going to be able to pick up that kill with the Dragon's Breath. Mr. Jim doing a great job with the death from above to push away Infamous, but it's not going to be enough. They're still going to make work on this turret so early on for what you would consider to be a late game team comp. They're really trying to finish this early, but Spaghetti already with 4 damage items, so deadly. They need to be careful. Mr. Jim so low on health, and they're just working on their second turret now. Guessing is back up on the fall, but Sync 1 will die before he even gets low on health. Looks like he could go down any second now. Mr. Jim trying to position themselves behind Spaghetti, but the game is already over as Infamous finishing that one even before Kraken is on the fold, managing to get the triple kill just for style points at the end for Ace. 14 minutes 51 in. GG, well played.
GG, well played indeed. 6 kills, 14 minutes in. People might think this is a very, very slow and boring match, but Infamous definitely just showing that they can apply pressure and they will not allow Bren Esports weapon battle to actually scale up for the late game. And this is something that I've talked about and I was talking about as well. Syncot, or rather weapon battle, does it very well in the early game, falls off very, very hard in the mid game, and comes back super strong in the late game after he gets a 4 or 3 damage items. And the side of Infamous just did not allow that to happen. Push every advantage they get and just push for the win just pre 15 minutes. Very well played to Infamous right there. And although Mr. Jim definitely put up a good fight in that of lane, but all in all, it didn't quite matter because Spaghetti on that mage role was just so very dominant in the laning phase itself, just disallowing Mr. Jim on that CP Sky to farm up and get the items. But all in all, I must say, you know, I'm really looking forward because the next match will be the deciding factor as to who moves on into the finals to go up against Nebulae and who will go up into the 3rd and 4th place playoff. And, you know, I request you know, what do you think? You know, Bren Esports, they looked very strong yesterday, looked very strong in the first game, but Infamous finally did find their footing in that of the second game. What would you expect coming into the 3rd game?
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, there's only so many within your turn, and they did end up giving the Grace and Glaive combo over to the side of Infamous, and I think that just proved how strong they were. Of course, they were able to pick up the Scarf to finish off their comp, which just, it made it so perfect for them because they hyper carried the Scarf, who just had such good sieging potential, and I'm not really sure how you shut that down, especially with a team against Infamous, but we'll have to see if Bren Esports have any idea of what they're going to do into this next draft as we jump into the final draft between the two teams, which is going to be the deciding factor of who moves on to the finals for week 3.
Yep, so I'm sure draft is ready. So without further ado, let's not keep anyone waiting. Let's jump in to the draft. Right, so coming into the draft, like you say, a lot of variables to think through, especially since now Infamous on the blue side and Bren Esports on that of Bren.
Ooh, and there's going to be the line on the side of Infamous, very target making. They want guessing to be playing that. Now the question is, what is going to be the first ban here coming out from the side of Bren Esports? Are they going to go for that Scarf or perhaps even that Grace that we've seen being played to great success?
Well, they can try to rule a mage out, I want to say, but they will just stick to the draft that they have been doing so far, and that would be removing that Idris from gameplay. However, the side of Infamous will be sticking hard onto that Grace. That Divine Intervention was working out so well for them, and the amount of slows and stuns, knockups that Grace can provide in a team fight is very, very important, and definitely will do well for Infamous if they do so want to go for a mage. But for the side of Bren Esports, I doubt they would like to go for that weapon battle again, seeing how it is so easily countered by a farmed up blue IC dragon. But from the side of Bren Esports, we will be seeing the Black Feather coming back.
Yep, and instead of banning out this Black Feather, going to instead. And I think that's a very good idea for the side of Bren Esports. And they're going to ban out that Celeste. It means Scarf is still open on the table. But you know what? We could see a Weapon Power Black Feather and possibly Bren Esports go for the pickup on the Scarf, as they are going to have the next pick after this ban. But there's the question, what do you think? Ooh, Infamous will get a ban here. I was going to ask you that, but they answered it for me. Two very targeted bans coming into this final matchup. They go for the Lance ban and they go for the Pedal ban to finish it off. And this could imply even more so why the side of Bren Esports could go for that Scarf. I mean, there's no need for them to go for Pedal now because they can't. So what do you think is going to be the answer?
I don't think Bren Esports would really go for that Scarf. It hasn't quite shown in their previous gameplay at all. If anything, they are giving a lot of thought into this, all in all, and they will settle for the Arden. Guessing X has played quite a good Arden, all in all. But, I mean, for me, if you were to ask me, Petal will not be picked up. I mean, since Petal is banned out and the side of Bren Esports don't have a history of picking up Scarf, they will just open a last pick maybe to a Tarka to maybe just starve that of Scarf out if Infamous brings out this Scarf. And Tarka will be highly a pickup for Sync1. Sync1 has worked very well with the Tarka, showed great performance as well when going up against Impunity yesterday, if I remember correctly, all in all.
Yep, and with that, it is maybe more so for give that team by securing this Arden pickup, and we could always see a replay of the first match that they had, and Infamous could have taken that Arden away. So I think locking down that Arden, making sure they have a decent support, is also a good idea.
Yep, definitely. I mean, with an Arden, you just boost mobility, and with that Gauntlet as well, a form of soft CC, unless, of course, you can land your Gauntlet on all three members of the enemy's team. But this time, Infamous really taking the time and will ultimately lock in the Grace and Glaive combination. And honestly, like I said, they should have just stopped or remove the Glaive out from Infamous. Infamous just played so well on that Glaive, and this time we will see once again Spaghetti going onto the CP Adagio.
Ooh, CP Adagio making a... I mean, Infamous have to... And now we're going to see what Bren Esports decide to go and reply to this, because once again, they've allowed the Glaive and Grace pickup for the side of Infamous, and it just goes so strong with so many laners. I'm not sure if Sky is the answer here. I really don't know. As much as I think that it's a good pick, because going against this Grace and this Glaive, even though you have this Surrey Strike available, it's only available so often, and then it means that with so much CC coming out from the side of Infamous, if they manage to put Sky in a bad position, she's quite squishy indeed and is going to fall very quickly unless we see a Weapon Power Sky, but I don't want that to happen. I want to see the CP Sky and the Weapon Power Black Feather pick, and I think then, yes, they have a decent comp. I'm just worried about how strong the comp is on Infamous and how good of a team comp they've put together overall, that just putting a CP Adagio in there, just it works out well. He's got so much sustain in his kit, and I'm sure Spaghetti can play him very well.
Yep,
and
I mean...
yeah, I have to say that Infamous looking very strong for this third and final match between the two teams.
Definitely, I must agree with you on that. With that, I mean, double sustain comp. It's either they can run Spaghetti on that Glaive and have Chingy on that Grace, and of course have a roaming Adagio that can be away as well. That way they just try their best to sustain Spaghetti on that of Glaive. They can just go into a 1v1 with that of Black Feather, can just quickly burst down that Sky, or they can just have Spaghetti on that Adagio and Chingy on that Glaive that has never quite failed Infamous so far. A lot of pressure will be on Bren Esports this game as to whether or not they can just come out from the comfort Petal zone and use heroes that are relatively more meta as compared to Petal and just win Infamous with this, because Infamous, they are kings of off-meta picks. They are very well oiled in terms of team synergy, so this is one thing that Bren Esports will have to show as well. And whether or not they will pull through and get to the finals is just down to this game.
Yes, it's down to this game indeed. Whichever team into the finals against Nebulae. So we'll have to wait and see. Obviously, the losing team, the third place matchup against J3X Inferno. So this fight, there's so much on the line for both of them. Not just that first to get into the finals, not just that opportunity, but for Infamous keeping that title as being one of the top teams, and Bren wanting to make a name for themselves here. If they can beat Infamous, it's just going to say a lot about Bren Esports. They've gone up against them before, they've put up a good fight before, but they've just never been able to win it out.
Yep, and that's one thing that maybe the set of Bren Esports have to reconsider coming into this game. Infamous, with a very aggressive maneuver, will probably be catching Guessing out after burn-in.
Oh, and they do the afterburn, catching out Guessing. Actually picking up that Benedict first, it will be enough to slow them down, and they managed to get the first blood onto Adam before he can get back to the turret to save his own life. However, he will be back on the fold within a matter of seconds, but that's first blood going over very early and very unnecessarily to the side of Infamous, as Bren Esports could have avoided that. They should have known that Infamous, especially with this Grace, like to play so aggressive in the early game with their rotations.
Definitely, and I usually would see a Grace rather, if with early game aggression maneuvers or movements coming out from Grace, usually will pick up the Dragon Blood contract. But with the Iron Guard, or rather the Protector contract coming out from Grace, means that she can supplement a form of health barrier to his teammates when the teammates are in engagement. That way it can help them sustain for a much longer time, on top of the sustain that Adagio can already provide in this early game. Mr. Jim going up against this Adagio in lane will have a pretty difficult time, especially since Adagio has got much longer range as compared to him, and the burn as well will probably disrupt him and just mess a lot with his farming phase.
Yeah, it will indeed, especially with melee. Those minions, it definitely gives the advantage to the side of Infamous, and more so Spaghetti on this Adagio. And we see once again Infamous with that rotation down into this jungle, being very aggressive, stealing a lot of farm away from the Sky, but Sky going to take that opportunity to come up to lane, put down a bit of pressure on Spaghetti. Spaghetti able to dodge out a fair amount of the damage coming off of poor Barrage, and now Sync1 having to rotate back to their jungle. Maybe they realize that Chingy could be back there, and Chingy just going to go back to base. I think, oh no, they might be able to steal away from his backs, but meanwhile up in lane, a bit of poke going down, Spaghetti going fairly low, Protector's contract was used, and looking back over into...
Oh, Sync1, maybe able to catch Chingy out.
Steal that one away. But yes, and back to the lane, so a fair bit going on all over the fold right now. Mr. Jim does get Spaghetti fairly low, but SNK is there to defend them for now. Mr. Jim stops the back by Spaghetti. It could be fake because SNK able to land the Holy Nova, and Guessing now going very low in return. This could be in favor of Infamous now, but Mr. Jim doing a good job at holding his ground.
Yep, Spaghetti as well, I must say. They started out pretty healthy. Oh, the amount of health barrier that Guessing X can provide in this early game is just so much. And the minion candy popped once again for the side of Bren Esports.
Look at this Chingy coming up behind the rest of it. And on K, but get back the Jim to push him on the turret and able to pick up. Jim caught up in the Vanguard, should be up to stay alive fairly long, goes down in the end, and Sync1, I don't think able to finish off a kill in return. So good job for Chingy rotating up behind them. They're able to make it an even trade and keep their advantage. Oh, Chingy almost catching out. No, the damage coming out from Chingy so early on was enough to kill Guessing.
Yep, and Spaghetti sitting on 2.7 thousand gold, really needs to shop soon. Only have got a Swifty and first tier boots in his pocket right now. But all in all, Spaghetti is still contributing in the team fights with that sustain and the gift of fire that he can put out for his allies in this early game. But all in all, in order for Spaghetti to actually put out a lot of pressure into lane, he really needs to shop and then just outpoke Mr. Jim in this laning phase. We all know Adagio just does so well in the early game, only because of the amount of damage he can have with just one alternating current as compared to other carries out there. And a lot of his basic attacks, even built as CP, comes from his comes from his B ability, that buff on himself. So that is one thing that maybe Bren Esports have to take advantage of, and that is just to turtle up, farm up for the late game, because Sync 1 and Mr. Jim just does so well in that late game as compared to the early game.
Yep, and we will have to fake him down. Just judging from previous Infamous matches, they will be able to take this turret by about 7 to 8 minutes if they continue to put the pressure down. Infamous, you know, seeing it 3 kills, that's a pretty good job. Meanwhile, Bren's still back at 1, so it's nothing to frown upon. But there's the death from above, catches out Chingy and SNK. The thing is, right now, Bren Esports in a bit of a similar situation to before. They just don't have the damage to respond to the opportunities they're given.
Oh, Chingy comes in, probably looking for an afterburn. SNK taking 2 turret shots from there.
Chingy walking very close, still holding on to that up there as we see Sync 1 pushing on to the lane with this Frostburn in hand. Is game ready to go on to Spaghetti, but Chingy is nearby and weighing. There's going to be the Holy Nova does catch out Sync 1, and Mr. Jim very low on the front line is just going to have to fight for it, but Chingy with an amazing afterburn helped Spaghetti pick up that kill, and then now looking very strong. They should be able to sustain this one out if they want to push for the turret, but realizing that minions are going to turn their attention elsewhere and just move down into the jungle.
Yep, very well played coming out from Infamous there, very swiftly picking up 3 kills, or rather 3 kills for themselves in that short time, although unable to push the turret yet. I mean, both Spaghetti and Chingy have to be in rather close range, and they do not quite have the damage over time like that, you know, of their mage. Or if they're on a mage roles, then, you know, mages just have got a better siege potential as compared to, say, this Adagio or even Chingy on this glaive. But all in all, they will excel in team fights in this early game. Now Chingy is sitting at level 7, has got Blood Song for the extra sustain as well, maybe looking for an afterburn.
Yeah, maybe indeed, as the minion in there gets caught out by the death from above, but afterburn to escape once again. A very good engage and disengage mechanic for that hero, and it will be up in another 10 seconds for them. And Bren Esports, meanwhile, not really looking for a fight, just going to hold this turret and continue to farm up. And I think that's what's so important. As long as they can continue to do that and not let Infamous get too far ahead, they still have an opportunity for them into the mid to late game.
Yep, and this is one thing maybe. I mean, all in all, I want to say that Bren Esports have got a better late game comp as compared to, say, Infamous and Spaghetti. I mean, granted, they have got an Adagio, so that would make full sense. The problem now is that Bren Esports probably very, very held back at this point in time, and just not looking to push, or rather, I mean Infamous is very held back at this point in time and just refusing to push their early game advantage. I mean, Infamous...
Ooh, I'm not sure if it's refusing or respecting Bren Esports. Dangerous position for Sky to be in as they get taken down instantly. The Divine Intervention going to heal Spaghetti back up, so anything Mr. Jim did before is going to be useless. Mr. Jim actually trying to get the minions at the back, so stopping the side of Infamous from pushing onto that turret. A very good technique, but whether they'll get caught out for it is the question. They don't have any Rose offensives available, and guessing going to jump in there with the Vanguard to try save them, but gets taken down instead, and they're both going to fall. Sky is up, and the only one left to defend this turret, though I don't think they can do it on their own. They need to be careful to not get taken out themselves and hand over the ace. Chingy already working on stealing some farm away, and this was the slip up. You saw it in that fight. Sync 1 just trying to get in there, found themselves in the Holy Nova. They got knocked up, and meanwhile Chingy was right next to that Grace, able damage onto Sync 1, take them out instantly. And then they just turned their attention to protecting Spaghetti, who was being jumped on by Mr. Jim, and it just worked out so well for Infamous.
Yep, and we saw the amount of damage that Spaghetti can put out onto Guessing X on that of Arden. And Arden is their dedicated roam, their dedicated tank all in all, and yet Spaghetti can just put out so much damage. Oh, the amount of damage on Sync 1.
Sync 1 going very low. Push this, and they are paying attention, but luckily it was whether Chingy's going to go over that wall. I wonder if he had the intention of doing so, but no, they're going to go for this Crystal Sentry. A bit later than the previous games we have seen by them, but still a fairly early Crystal Sentry overall. After they've taken their first turret, it is a good idea for that to be the next objective. It is quite hard to push in.
Yep, definitely. I mean,
Crystal Sentry and some farm is that idea.
Yep, I mean, after you take the first turret, generally half of the jungle quite belongs to you. You have got that roaming opportunity, and you can just capitalize on the fact that, you know, your enemies cannot be anywhere near the first turret after you've taken it down. It is Spaghetti, though, looking to put some pressure onto Mr. Jim, buffed himself up as well. Sync 1 goes in with the barrage, but just not connecting whatsoever. Infamous now being super patient with their engagers and understanding the power spikes that maybe Sync 1 has got now, but Infamous going in, pushing this wave in, probably trying to take this second turret out of Bren Esports' hands.
Yep. Oh, Mr. Jim going down instantly. This back damage. Mind showing as SK uses the Divine Intervention to keep him alive, has the Echo available, so Divine Intervention up once again to help them push through this turret, but they don't even need it. They're going to be able to take it, and that's getting kills and taking so much away from it really pushes them through to the win, slowly but surely. What's really, I think, the way to beat Infamous is to even with them throughout the whole game, but it's such a tough thing to do. It's easier said than done, of course, or manage to get Kraken steals and turn it around late game with some spectacular comeback, but there's going to be no gold mine steal at this point, and SNK going to be able to escape the grasps of Bren Esports, and we can see that lead starting to build up for the side of Infamous. I mean, they've already got 9 kills over to 1 kill on the side of Bren Esports, but when we look at the gold, they're 30k over to 23.k. It's a fairly similar situation to last time, and if they win any more team fights and take any more objectives, they're definitely on their way to that 10k lead, where I just think Infamous is unstoppable.
Yep, I mean, Infamous, so very comfortable on the respective heroes that they are on and they are playing on. So, you know, if Infamous do close this out and do not have a 10k gold, it will be more pressure coming out from Infamous.
Yep, Mr. Jim needing to be careful. The Infamous really wants anchor pressure as soon as possible, not letting Bren Esports get towards that late game. SNK jumping Sync 1, but Black Feather isn't here to help defend the turret, but it looks like Infamous might back out from that. Death from above was used, and there's the gauntlet coming down from Guessing. They're going for the fight, but Guessing in the middle, it will be not the first one to go down. They do manage to get Ching in, they manage to get Spaghetti. Bren with the turnaround. SNK going in with the stay alive as long as they can, but Bren Esports getting the ace and not losing anyone in it. If this was only a few minutes later, Bren Esports could have got a Kraken from this, but we're still 13 minutes 20 in. I'm sure this is enough. Their faces, they managed to get a turret, and just getting that ace against Infamous must feel so good at this point, where Infamous were in so much control of this game until then.
Well, but honestly, if you don't ask me, I just need to say, and I will say, it was because SNK was chilling by the brush there that allowed and just put Infamous, only Chingy and Spaghetti in the lane in the fight. Although SNK did come up with the Divine Intervention, but SNK was stuck at a gauntlet for quite a while before he actually entered the fight. And all in all, he wasn't part of the fight he was only part of the fight rather after Chingy and Spaghetti went down very quickly in. And that is one thing that maybe Infamous have to work on, and maybe it's the synergy and maybe communications as well going into any team fights from now. They really cannot allow any more slip-ups from here on, because I mean, look at Mr. Jim. Mr. Jim has got a Serpent's Mask, Poison Shift, and Breaking Point going towards the defenses as well. And Sync1 has got 2 items now built up. SNK goes in with the Benediction.
Yep, and does find Sync1, but there's going to be the Vanguard. Safety of that base instead of trying to fight this on the side. Although Gauntlet is up once again, they could force a fight. Death from Above going to zone out the rest of Infamous, and I'm not sure if they're going to be looking for anything more. But no, they're just going to clear the way. There's going to be the Gauntlet. They managed to catch out Chingy on the edge of it, but it means Infamous still together overall as a team, and Mr. Jim taking so much damage from Spaghetti. There's going to be the Divine Intervention to heal Spaghetti right back up, and the Fountain used for the side of Bren Esports. Meanwhile, Infamous able to hold on to that Fountain. They get the Anchor Turret, and there's no Gauntlet on the side of Bren Esports. They don't have that Echo yet, so they're at a disadvantage if they choose to fight now.
Yep. Oh, SNK very low.
It looks like SNK going low, but that is only the Roma, and it is not the damage dealers as we see Chingy going in instantly, picking up Mr. Jim in return, almost getting guess as well. Before that, when Infamous was split up, is definitely an opportunity for Bren Esports to win, and I think that's why even with the and that we saw via Arden pick up is a good supplementary pick, because you have that Gauntlet that can really split up those teams that work so well together. And that is a lot of the factor there, that even if it was Infamous' mistake for being mispositioned, it's up to Arden to land those Gauntlets to take advantage of that.
I mean, we saw the amount of damage Spaghetti has. Just went in, healed himself, slowed Arden up, buffed himself, and landed 3 basic attacks, and Arden is forced now just to back home and heal up, and that was Arden down to half health just from 3 buff basic attacks from Spaghetti. However, looking over to SNK, I must say I really like the build coming out from SNK. Has got a contraption for the extra vision, extra cooldown, extra health as well. On top of that, has got Echo and Shatter Glass. That means SNK will be healing a truck and be able to do damage with that Holy Nova and the Divine, or rather Benediction. So healing now would be prioritized, or rather is the emphasis now for Infamous. They really want to be in the midst of fight, and on top of that as well, Infamous, or rather Spaghetti, or rather Chingy. Oh, I just kept getting names mixed up. Just wants their bestest, right, to just put out as much damage in the shortest amount of time, and with the amount of sustain that SNK can provide with this particular build on him, it is just insane the amount of heal that will be coming out from SNK on this grades.
Yeah, and we do see that Kraken is back on the fold once again. Or I believe, did they push through those turrets without even needing Kraken?
Yes, they did.
It just felt like they had, to be honest, it felt like they had a Kraken with them. That is how strong and how good Infamous are at pushing through these objectives. And I mean, they've managed to break open the base. There's only the last 2 remaining turrets in front of the Vein Crystal for them. So 1 Kraken is all they need, and that looks like a bit of a glitch on my screen. Guessing should have landed that Gauntlet elsewhere, but the wall catching him out, making it go back a fair bit. He does have the Echo, however. That is not when you want to use the Echo for a mistake like that. There's going to be the Death from Above on the backline, but they rarely need a word. Spaghetti who's pushing in. There's going to be the Gauntlet, but a defensive one. Fountain used as well. Everything being used on the side of Bren Esports just to escape. And Chingy is going to dive into the front line. Sync1 doing a great job of getting the target lock and using the Surrey Strike to get around them. But I wouldn't be surprised if Infamous rush a Kraken now, or they will continue to focus down this lane.
I mean, they can just push this lane out and rush for this Kraken, as we do see Chingy starting the Kraken off. Spaghetti in a position.
Positioning by Spaghetti back here. So patient with it. He's waiting until the last second. Go to the line, but Sync1 diving away instantly. There's going to be the Verse of Judgment, stuns out guessing, and now it's such in favor of Infamous, but Sync1 not going down with our fight, manages to find the kill onto Glaive, although he's the last one left standing for Bren Esports. The Crystal Sentry is alive, and he's going to make Refugee there for now. Needs to be careful, however, because even with only Spaghetti and SNK, they can surely take the Kraken with the damage that Spaghetti has. He's got the All-Name Current, Broken Myth, Shatter Glass, and now picking up that Frostburn, and has the Crystal Infusion as well. Spaghetti just so strong at point 190 CS in, and we're 19 minutes into this game, so very good, perfect farm. Whether Sky's going to go and challenge, question, they are all on their own. Guessing is still in the base. Sync One's going to go for it. They try and fight out with Spaghetti, but Spaghetti dodges out the death from above and gets the healing from Divine Intervention. Are they going to go back into the fight is the question. Guessing flares it out. Is he able to get the steal? No, he doesn't. He lands, but this still could be a turnaround for Bren if they act fast, but second Divine Intervention coming through onto Spaghetti. 1,000 healing, just massive at this point. They're able to keep them alive, and really, they're forcing Bren Esports onto their back feet here. They've only got their last 2 turrets to defend. Is looking dire indeed.
Yep, very, very dire. And now Spaghetti just putting down basic attacks onto Guessing, pushing with Helga down this lane, and hopefully, or rather for the side of Infamous, hopefully closing this game out. Chingy once again very patient, just looking for that afterburn. Mr. Jim with those on point, just trying to poke out, but a fight will ensue.
Oh, and great Holy Nova is going to knock Guessing and Mr. Jim for them to go back to working on this Kraken, trying to defend, but they need to try get some of Infamous down, and that's going to be the death the Verse of Judgment. Meanwhile, Sky able to pick up a kill onto Glaive, but they're going so low to this Adagio, and Adagio managed to pick up the kill, pick up the turret. Mr. Jim trying to find their way to Spaghetti, but walks right into the Holy Nova. Kraken still at half health, and it looks like this is game for Infamous. GG, well played, and Infamous showing that they are still the top of the table, managing to take it 2-1. Although Bren Esports putting up a great game, a great match in the first game with that weapon power pedal, they just weren't able to bring it through in the second one, and obviously in this third match it was banned out by Infamous. But overall, I must say Bren Esports, even in this final match, did put up a good fight.
They definitely did. I mean, there was one